My name is Dusty Harrington, 67 years old, and I spent 4 decades building the house I thought would be my forever home. When my daughter Jennifer married Jackson 6 months ago, I had reservations but kept them to myself. Then last Tuesday, he walked through my front door with a notary and a stack of papers, smiling like a fox in a henhouse. Before I tell you how I outsmarted the man who tried to steal my life's work, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. What I'm about to share might save someone you love from a similar betrayal. I never expected to be a single father. My wife Martha and I had planned a lifetime together in this house, watching our Jennifer grow up, maybe welcoming grandchildren someday. But cancer took Martha 8 years ago, leaving me to finish raising our daughter alone. She was 21 then, already an adult by most standards, but a father never stops being a father. This house means everything to me. I bought the property when it was nothing but a modest 2-bedroom home with a leaky roof and drafty windows back in 1982. Martha and I were just starting out, both of us working overtime shifts to make the mortgage payments. Over the years, I added the second floor myself, built the deck where we celebrated Jennifer's high school graduation, and renovated the kitchen where Martha taught our daughter to bake her famous apple pie. Every corner holds memories. When Martha passed, Jennifer stayed with me for a year before getting her own apartment downtown. She insisted I keep the house exactly as it was, not wanting to lose the touches of her mother that remained in the wallpaper she had chosen and the garden she had planted. I honored that wish, keeping Martha's presence alive in our home. Jennifer grew into an impressive young woman. At 29, she was smart as a whip, kind-hearted to a fault, but somewhat inexperienced when it came to relationships. She focused on her career at First National Bank, where she worked as a loan officer. She was good at her job, making decent money, but her social life consisted mostly of a small circle of work friends and occasional visits home for Sunday dinners. I worried about her being alone. Not that a woman needs a partner to be complete. Martha would have scolded me for suggesting such a thing, but Jennifer seemed lonely sometimes. She would scroll through social media during our dinners, looking at friends from college who were getting married and starting families. I caught the wistful look in her eyes. So, I did what any concerned father might do. I started introducing her to the sons of my fishing buddies, nice young men with steady jobs and good values. She humored me by going on a few dates, but nothing clicked. She said they were all too predictable, too safe. She wanted something more exciting, she told me. I should have remembered that old saying about being careful what you wish for. My own health was starting to show signs of my age. High blood pressure had me on medication, and my knees protested loudly every time I climbed the stairs. Still, I managed just fine on my own. I kept the house in good repair, mowed my lawn weekly, and even helped my neighbors Harold and Mabel Johnson with their home maintenance. Harold was 72, and Mabel 69, and we had been neighbors for over 30 years. They checked in on me regularly, bringing over casseroles and keeping me company on the anniversary of Martha's passing. The housing market in our area had exploded over the years. What we bought for just under $70,000 was now worth close to $700,000. Our quiet suburban neighborhood had become prime real estate as the city expanded outward. Developers frequently left flyers in my mailbox, offering to buy my property. I always threw them away. This was my home, not an investment opportunity. I had a comfortable retirement from my years as a construction foreman, plus a small pension from the union. Between my savings and Social Security, I could maintain my lifestyle without worry. Jennifer occasionally suggested I downsize, arguing that maintaining such a large house was becoming too much for me. I always laughed it off, telling her that keeping busy kept me young. The truth was, I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. Every nail, every board in this house had been touched by my hands. It was more than property to me. It was my legacy. Every Sunday, Jennifer would come over for dinner. We would cook together, something Martha had insisted we both learn how to do. Those evenings were the highlight of my week. We would talk about her work, my projects around the house, and occasionally, she would mention her desire to meet someone special. I told her not to rush it, that the right person would come along when the time was right. If only I had known what was coming, I might have kept those reassurances to myself. It was during one of our Sunday dinners in early April that Jennifer arrived with an unusual sparkle in her eyes. She was practically buzzing with excitement as she helped me prepare the roast chicken. "Dad, I met someone," she blurted out while chopping carrots. "His name is Jackson Mercer. He's 35 and works as a real estate broker." I remember pausing, knife hovering over an onion. "That sounds promising. How did you meet him?" "He came into the bank for a meeting about financing options for his clients," she explained. "Afterward, he asked me out for coffee. We've been seeing each other for 3 weeks now." I nodded, trying to match her enthusiasm. "Well, bring him around sometime. I'd like to meet this young man." 2 weeks later, Jennifer brought Jackson to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown, her treat. She wanted our first meeting to be on neutral ground, she said. Jackson arrived in a sleek black sports car, dressed in an expensive-looking suit that seemed a size too small, as if he wanted to showcase his gym-sculpted physique. His handshake was firm to the point of being aggressive, his smile brilliant, but somehow never reaching his eyes. Throughout dinner, he charmed Jennifer with stories of his successful deals and celebrity clients. He had a way of making everything sound impressive, while providing remarkably few specific details. When I asked where he grew up, he vaguely mentioned moving around a lot as a kid. When I inquired about his family, he quickly changed the subject. What struck me most was how frequently his gaze wandered around my house when Jennifer finally brought him over for dinner the following week. He seemed to be mentally measuring every room, assessing the property, rather than getting to know me. His questions were telling too. "This neighborhood has really taken off in value, hasn't it, Dusty?" he asked, using my first name despite my never offering that familiarity. "You must be sitting on quite the nest egg with this place. Do you have it in a trust? Or is it just in your name?" Jennifer jumped in before I could answer. "Dad had the house put in both our names after Mom died. We thought it was simpler that way for inheritance purposes." I saw something flash in Jackson's eyes then, a calculation being made. He smiled and nodded, but I felt a chill run through me. Within weeks, Jennifer was completely smitten. Jackson sent extravagant flower arrangements to her at work. He took her to exclusive restaurants where he claimed to know the owners. For her birthday, just 2 months after they met, he presented her with diamond earrings that made me wonder about his actual income as a supposedly successful broker. My concern grew when Jennifer began mentioning weekend trips to nearby resorts, designer clothes appearing in her wardrobe, and the constant presence of Jackson at every decision in her life. The relationship was moving at an alarming pace. I tried to learn more about him. A quick internet search revealed a sparse social media presence for someone claiming to be so well-connected. His real estate license was legitimate, but his name wasn't featured prominently on any agency websites. When I casually asked my neighbor Harold, who had worked in banking for 40 years before retiring, to ask around about Jackson Mercer, Harold reported back that no one seemed to know him as a major player in local real estate. Just 3 months after they met, Jennifer arrived at my house on a Sunday afternoon. Her hand extended to show off a diamond engagement ring that must have cost more than Jackson could afford if his business was as successful as he claimed. "We're getting married, Dad," she exclaimed, her face flushed with joy. "Jackson proposed last night at Bellini's." I tried to mask my shock with a smile. "That's certainly sudden, sweetheart. Are you sure you know each other well enough for such a big step?" Her smile faltered slightly. "When you know, Dad. Mom and you only dated for 6 months before you got engaged. Remember? That was different times," I said carefully. "And we had known each other since high school." Jennifer's expression hardened slightly. "I thought you would be happy for me." "I want you to be happy," I assured her. "I just want to make sure this is the right decision. Marriage is a big commitment." "Jackson makes me happy," she insisted. "He's ambitious, successful, and he adores me. What more could I want?" I tried a different approach in the following weeks, suggesting they extend their engagement to at least a year, giving them time to plan a proper wedding. Jackson shot down that idea immediately. "Why wait when we're so sure?" he said. his arm possessively around Jennifer's shoulders. "We're thinking a small ceremony in just a few months. Nothing extravagant." Jackson began appearing at my house more frequently, always when Jennifer was present. He started making suggestions about my living situation that made me uncomfortable. "This place is really too big for just you, Dusty," he would say, wandering around my living room. "All these stairs can't be good for a man your age. Jennifer and I were thinking after we're married, it might make sense for you to find something more manageable. Maybe one of those nice senior communities across town." When I assured him I was perfectly capable of managing my home, he would exchange glances with Jennifer, as if my resistance was proof of some decline in my faculties. One evening, as Jackson and Jennifer were leaving after dinner, my neighbor Harold stopped by to return a tool he had borrowed. After they drove away, Harold lingered on the porch. "Dusty," he said quietly, "I've seen that young man meeting with some shady-looking characters near your property line a few times this week. They were looking at maps and pointing at your house. Might be nothing, but thought you should know." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something wasn't right, and my gut was screaming at me to pay attention. The wedding was set for October, just 6 months after Jennifer and Jackson had met. Everything about the planning felt rushed and controlled. Jackson insisted on a small ceremony at the courthouse, rather than the church wedding I had always imagined for my daughter. When I offered to pay for something more elaborate, he smoothly deflected. "We're practical people, Dusty," he explained. "Why waste money on one day when we could put it toward our future?" Jennifer seemed perfectly content with these arrangements, though I noticed she had stopped mentioning her childhood dreams of a garden wedding like her mother had. Jackson had a way of reshaping her desires to match his own. The guest list was surprisingly short. Jennifer had always been well-liked, with many friends from school and work, but Jackson convinced her to limit attendees to immediate family and a few close friends. Most of my fishing buddies and longtime neighbors were excluded, including Harold and Mabel, who had known Jennifer since she was born. "The courthouse has limited capacity," Jackson explained when I questioned this. "We have to be selective." On the wedding day, I escorted Jennifer into the stark courthouse room, where Jackson waited with a justice of the peace and his best man, a fidgety-looking fellow named Troy, whom I had never met before. Jennifer looked beautiful in a simple white dress, but I missed the joy and celebration that should have surrounded this moment. The ceremony lasted less than 15 minutes. During the small reception at a nearby restaurant, I noticed Jackson spending more time talking to the justice of the peace than to his new bride. Their conversation seemed intense, with paperwork being discreetly passed between them. When I approached, they quickly separated. As was tradition, I prepared a speech for the reception. I spoke of Martha, how proud she would have been of Jennifer, and presented the couple with my wedding gift, a check for $25,000 from my savings. "This was meant to help with a down payment on your own home someday," I explained, "but use it however you need." Jackson took the check with a tight smile. "That's very generous, Dusty, but actually, we've been talking about our living situation." He glanced at Jennifer, who nodded encouragingly. "We think it makes the most sense for us to move in with you, just temporarily. It would help us save for a bigger place while giving you some company and help around the house." Before I could respond, Jennifer added, "It's perfect, Dad. Jackson can help with the maintenance, and you won't be alone anymore." Their decision caught me off guard, but I couldn't very well refuse my daughter and her new husband. So a week after the wedding, they moved into the guest bedroom upstairs, the one I had built myself when Jennifer was 10 years old. The changes were immediate and unsettling. Jackson began rearranging furniture without asking, claiming he was opening up the space. Items that had belonged to Martha began disappearing, replaced with modern decor that Jennifer and Jackson had selected together. When I questioned the whereabouts of Martha's antique reading lamp or her collection of bird figurines, Jennifer would say they were stored safely in the attic, but I could never find them when I looked. More concerning was the gradual shift in Jennifer's behavior toward me. My once patient daughter began sighing heavily when I told stories she had heard before. She would exchange glances with Jackson when I took too long finding the right word or forgot where I had put my reading glasses. Small irritations that she would have once brushed off now became evidence in some unspoken case they were building. "Dad, you left the stove on again this morning," she would say, her voice tinged with concern that felt performative. "Jackson found it when he came down for coffee. That could have been dangerous." I knew I had turned the stove off. I always did, by habit formed over decades. But Jackson would nod solemnly, adding, "Happened twice last week, too." I didn't want to mention it, but since Jennifer brought it up, I began to feel like a stranger in my own home, constantly observed and found wanting. Jackson suggested rearranging my medication, offering to set up a pill organizer, since I was having trouble keeping track. I had never missed a dose in 8 years. One afternoon, I returned early from a doctor's appointment to find Jackson in my home office, rifling through my filing cabinet where I kept all my important documents: property deeds, insurance policies, Martha's life insurance papers, and my will. He quickly closed the drawer when he heard me. "Just looking for a screwdriver," he claimed, though there were none kept in that room, and we both knew it. The dining room light fixture is loose. That night, I checked my files and found everything seemingly in place, but with that slight disorder that suggests careful rifling. I began to lock my office door after that, keeping the key with me at all times. Jackson noticed immediately, asking casually why I had started locking that particular room. "Just some private papers in there," I answered. "Nothing interesting, but force of habit from my working days." He smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "No need for locked doors in a family home, Dusty. We're all family now." The word family in his mouth sounded like a threat rather than a comfort. Things escalated quickly after I caught Jackson in my office. At dinner that week, he brought up the subject of senior living facilities, presenting a glossy brochure for Sunshine Meadows, an assisted living complex on the outskirts of town. "I took the liberty of touring this place yesterday," Jackson said, sliding the brochure across the table. "They have an opening next month. It's perfect for someone in your situation, Dusty. Full medical staff on premises, daily activities, meal service." I pushed the brochure back without opening it. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm perfectly happy here in my own home." Jennifer reached for my hand, her expression one of rehearsed concern. "Dad, we've been worried about you. Your blood pressure has been so unstable lately, and those dizzy spells." "What dizzy spells?" I asked, genuinely confused. Jackson jumped in smoothly. "You nearly fell in the shower last week, remember? And you had to sit down suddenly while gardening on Tuesday." Neither of these events had happened, at least not to my recollection. But before I could protest, Jennifer continued, "We just think you'd be safer somewhere with medical professionals nearby. This place even has a beautiful garden you could tend, just a smaller one that wouldn't be too much work." I looked between them, realization dawning. They wanted me out of my house, and they were constructing a narrative of decline to justify it. "I'm not going anywhere," I said firmly. "This is my home." Jackson's smile tightened. "No one's trying to force you, Dusty. We're just concerned. Sleep on it." That night, I couldn't fall asleep, troubled by their coordinated effort. I got up to take my blood pressure medication and noticed something odd about the pills. They seemed slightly larger than usual, with a different imprint. I had been taking the same medication for years and knew exactly what they looked like. These were different. The next morning, I left the house early, taking my pill bottle with me. Instead of going to my regular pharmacy, I drove to one in the next town over. The pharmacist confirmed my suspicions after examining the pills. "These aren't atenolol," she said, looking concerned. "They appear to be a benzodiazepine, likely diazepam, commonly known as Valium. It's a sedative that can cause drowsiness, confusion, and yes, dizziness, especially in older adults. Do you have a prescription for this?" I did not. Someone had been swapping my blood pressure medication with sedatives, explaining the sudden dizzy spells Jennifer and Jackson had been so concerned about. The implications were chilling. When I returned home, Jackson's car was gone, but an unfamiliar sedan was parked in the driveway. Jennifer introduced the visitor as Dr. Patterson, a friend of Jackson's who had kindly agreed to check on me. The so-called doctor spent 15 minutes asking me questions about my daily routine, my medication, and whether I ever felt confused or disoriented. His examination was cursory at best. Before leaving, he pulled Jennifer aside for a conversation I couldn't hear, but her worried glances in my direction told me everything I needed to know. After he left, Jennifer approached me with tears in her eyes. "Dr. Patterson thinks you should consider full-time care, Dad. He says your symptoms are consistent with early dementia." "That man is not my doctor," I said firmly, "and I want to see his medical license." Jennifer's expression hardened slightly. "Why are you being so difficult? We're trying to help you." I didn't confront her about the medication. Not yet. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I made my move. The next day, I visited my actual physician, Dr. Rodriguez, who had been treating me for over a decade. After a thorough examination and cognitive assessment, he found nothing concerning. "Your blood pressure is actually lower than last time, which is good news," he said, "and your cognitive function is completely normal for a man your age. Better than average, I'd say." "Who told you otherwise?" I explained the situation vaguely, not wanting to accuse my daughter outright. Dr. Rodriguez frowned. "I'd be happy to write a letter confirming your excellent health and cognitive status," he offered, "and I'd suggest keeping your medication somewhere secure." Armed with this documentation, I returned home to find Jackson on the phone in the kitchen. He didn't notice me entering through the back door. "The paperwork should be ready next week," he was saying in a low voice. "The old man's getting suspicious, but it won't matter once the transfer is complete. Jennifer still thinks it's temporary, so keep that story consistent when you talk to her." He noticed me then and quickly ended the call. "Dusty, didn't hear you come in, just checking on a property for a client." That night, I called Harold and asked for a favor. He agreed without hesitation to keep an eye on the house while I was at my weekly physical therapy appointment the next day, an appointment that I would pretend to attend but actually skip. Harold called me that afternoon, his voice tight with concern. "Dusty, a black sedan was parked outside your house for about an hour. Jackson met with a man carrying a briefcase and legal documents. They spent most of the time in your office. I recognized the man as Nathan Ellis, a notary who works with several real estate agencies in town. My suspicions were mounting, but I needed concrete evidence. Using skills I hadn't employed since my days in the Army, I conducted my own investigation. A public records search revealed that Jackson Mercer had only obtained his real estate license 3 years ago. Before that, there was a 5-year gap in his employment history that coincided with a prison sentence served by a James Morrison for elder fraud and identity theft in a neighboring state. The mugshot, though showing a man with different hair and no beard, had the same cold eyes and distinctive scar on his right eyebrow that Jackson tried to conceal with careful grooming. I took this information to Jennifer one afternoon when Jackson was supposedly showing properties. She refused to look at the printouts I had gathered. "Stop this, Dad," she said, her voice trembling. "You're embarrassing yourself. Jackson loves me. He wants what's best for all of us. He's using you to get to the house," I insisted. "His real name is James Morrison, and he's done this before." Jennifer stood up, face flushed. "I'm not listening to this. You've never given him a chance. You're just jealous that I found someone who makes me happy." She stormed out, calling Jackson immediately. I could hear her in the driveway, reassuring him that I was just confused and upset, that she didn't believe a word I said. When she came back inside, she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Jackson thinks you need a psychiatric evaluation," she said quietly. "He's making an appointment with a specialist." I knew then that I was running out of time. 3 days later, the confrontation I had been anticipating finally arrived. Jackson walked into the living room, where I was reading the newspaper, Jennifer trailing behind him. Alongside them was Nathan Ellis, the notary Harold had described, carrying a leather portfolio. "Dusty," Jackson began, his voice professionally sympathetic, "we need to have a serious conversation about your future." He gestured for Ellis to open his portfolio, revealing a stack of official-looking documents. We found a perfect solution for everyone. Sunshine Meadows has a premium suite available immediately. Jennifer and I have already handled the paperwork to sell this house, and the proceeds will more than cover your care for the rest of your life. My heart hammered in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. You've sold my house without my consent? Jackson smiled thinly. Jennifer's name is on the deed as well, as you know, and as your daughter, she has your best interests at heart. The doctor's assessment indicates you're no longer capable of managing your own affairs. These papers, he tapped the stack Ellis had placed on the coffee table, will transfer power of attorney to Jennifer and confirm your voluntary admission to Sunshine Meadows. I looked at my daughter, searching for any sign of the woman I had raised. Is this what you want, Jennifer? To throw me out of my home? She wouldn't meet my eyes. It's for your own good, Dad. You need specialized care that we can't provide. And the house? I pressed. Who's buying it so conveniently and quickly? Jackson interjected smoothly. A development company I work with. They're offering well above market value because they want the entire block eventually. It's an excellent deal. I had no doubt the development company was somehow connected to Jackson himself, probably through the fidgety best man from the wedding, Troy. I see, I said slowly. And when would I need to leave? Jackson seemed relieved by my apparent compliance. The moving company comes on Friday. The facility is expecting you by Saturday afternoon. Just bring personal items. The suite comes fully furnished. 4 days. They were giving me 4 days to leave the home I had built with my own hands, where I had raised my daughter and loved my wife. I'll need some time to process this, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Could you leave the paperwork with me to review? Ellis looked uncertainly at Jackson, who nodded. Of course, Dusty. Take tonight to look it over. We'll need your signatures tomorrow, though. The buyers are eager to close. After they left, I carefully examined the documents. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Jackson hadn't just arranged to sell my house. He had drafted paperwork declaring me mentally incompetent, with Jennifer's signature already in place as a witness. There were property transfer documents showing a sale price well below market value to a company called Meridian Development, which a quick internet search revealed had been incorporated just 3 weeks earlier. Most disturbing was a medical assessment with a forged signature from Dr. Patterson diagnosing me with moderate dementia. But what truly broke my heart was a page bearing what appeared to be my signature on a power of attorney document dated 2 weeks earlier. I had never signed such a thing. The forgery was good, but not perfect. Someone, presumably Jackson, had been practicing my signature. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the weight of betrayal heavy on my shoulders. Then I picked up the phone and called the one person I knew could help me navigate this legal nightmare. Frank Thompson, my old high school friend who had become a respected elder law attorney. I need your help, Frank, I said when he answered. And I need it fast. Frank listened without interruption as I laid out everything that had happened. When I finished, his voice was grim. This is elder abuse and attempted fraud, Dusty. We need to move quickly and carefully. Don't sign anything they give you, and don't let on that you're fighting back yet. Over the next 2 days, I implemented Frank's advice with military precision. First, I visited my bank and secured my accounts, requiring in person signature verification for any withdrawals or transfers. Then I placed my most important documents and valuables in a safe deposit box only I could access. With Frank's guidance, I filed a police report documenting the medication, tampering, and suspected forgery. The detective assigned to the case, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Ramirez, took detailed notes and photographs of the altered medication. Unfortunately, without catching someone in the act, it's hard to prove who switched your pills, she explained. But this report establishes a pattern of behavior that will be valuable if this escalates. Meanwhile, my neighbors Harold and Mabel helped me install hidden cameras in the common areas of my home. I've been telling Mabel something wasn't right about that young man from day one, Harold muttered, as he concealed a small camera inside a bookshelf. Never trust a man whose handshake doesn't match his smile. I also purchased several voice-activated recorders, placing them strategically throughout the house, including under my desk in the office where Jackson seemed most interested in searching. Frank prepared legal countermeasures, including a cease and desist letter regarding the fraudulent sale of my property, and an emergency petition to block any power of attorney documents bearing my name. He also connected me with Adult Protective Services, who opened an investigation into potential elder abuse. The key is evidence, Frank emphasized during our strategy session. We need to catch them admitting what they're doing. Can you get them talking? I assured him I could. After decades in construction management, I knew how to get people to reveal more than they intended. As I prepared for my final confrontation with Jackson and Jennifer, I felt an odd calm settle over me. The betrayal still hurt, especially from my daughter, but I had survived worse. I had buried my wife, rebuilt my life, and raised a child alone. I could handle this too. I won't lose my home, I told Frank firmly, and I won't give up on my daughter either. Jackson has manipulated her somehow, and I'm going to break his hold on her. Frank nodded grimly. Just be careful, old friend. Men like Jackson don't back down easily when their schemes are threatened. I knew he was right. The next few days would determine not just the fate of my home, but possibly my relationship with my daughter, forever. The morning after my meeting with Frank, I began implementing our strategy. I started by appearing noticeably more confused and tired at breakfast, shuffling around in my bathrobe well past my usual rising time. Are you feeling all right, Dad? Jennifer asked, a note of satisfaction barely concealed in her concern. Just a bit foggy this morning, I mumbled, fumbling with my coffee cup. Did I take my pills already? I can't remember. Jackson exchanged a meaningful look with Jennifer. I'll get them for you, Dusty. Why don't you sit down before you fall down? I docilely accepted the pills he brought, pretending to swallow them, while actually tucking them into my cheek to dispose of later. The recorders were running, capturing every interaction. Throughout the day, I continued my performance, appearing increasingly disoriented. I accidentally knocked over a glass of water on some of their paperwork, apologizing profusely while Jackson barely contained his frustration. It's fine, Dusty, he said through gritted teeth. We have copies. Why don't you go lie down for a while? Instead, I wandered into my office, leaving the door ajar. As I'd hoped, Jackson followed me after a few minutes. Looking for something? He asked casually, leaning against the doorframe. My checkbook, I said vaguely. Need to pay some bills. Jackson stepped into the room, closing the door partially. You know, with the move coming up, Jennifer and I can handle all your finances from now on. In fact, we should probably add me to your accounts to make things simpler. That makes sense, I agreed, sounding relieved. There's so much to keep track of these days. He smiled, sensing victory. Exactly. You've worked hard your whole life, Dusty. Time to let someone else handle the stressful details. Like selling my house? I asked innocently. A flash of wariness crossed his face before his smooth mask returned. It's for the best. You'll be much more comfortable at Sunshine Meadows. And you and Jennifer, where will you live after the sale? We'll find a place, he said vaguely. The market has some great opportunities right now. Like buying property below market value from elderly people who don't know any better? I asked, my voice suddenly clear and focused. Jackson stiffened. I don't know what you're implying. I think you do, James. Or do you prefer Jackson these days? His face paled slightly at the use of his real name. You're confused, Dusty. Maybe you should rest before you say something you'll regret. I'm not confused at all, I replied calmly. In fact, I've never seen things more clearly. I know exactly who you are and what you're trying to do, and I have proof. Jackson's expression darkened. Proof of what exactly? That your daughter and I are concerned about your declining health? That we've found a solution that benefits everyone? Any judge will see we're acting in your best interest. A judge will also be interested in your previous conviction for elder fraud in Minnesota under the name James Morrison. 5 years in state prison, wasn't it? Released 3 years ago, just before Jackson Mercer got his real estate license. His eyes narrowed dangerously. You're making serious accusations without evidence, old man. Be careful. Oh, I have evidence, I assured him, including the fact that you've been tampering with my medication, replacing my blood pressure pills with sedatives to make me appear confused and disoriented. Jackson laughed, but there was no humor in it. And who's going to believe you? Your own daughter has signed statements about your mental decline. We have a doctor's assessment. You're just a paranoid old man who can't accept that he needs help. Everything you just said has been recorded, I informed him, pulling out one of the small recording devices from my pocket. Along with your conversations with Troy about the fraudulent property sale to your shell company, Meridian Development. The color drained from Jackson's face as he lunged toward me, reaching for the recorder. I sidestepped him with surprising agility for my supposed frailty. I wouldn't do that, I warned. Assaulting an elderly man would just add to your charges. And this isn't the only recording. I have cameras throughout the house, and copies of everything are already with my attorney. Just then, Jennifer pushed the door open, looking concerned. What's going on? I heard raised voices. Jackson composed himself quickly. Your father is having another episode, sweetheart. He's making wild accusations and threatening me. I looked directly at my daughter. Jennifer, I need you to listen carefully. Jackson is not who he claims to be. His real name is James Morrison, and he's using you to get to this house. Dad, stop, she cried. This is exactly why we need to get you proper care. Ask him about Meridian Development, I pressed. Ask him who's really buying this house, and for how much. Jennifer looked uncertainly at Jackson, who had regained his composure. It's a reputable company, Jennifer. Your father is confused and becoming paranoid. This is exactly what the doctor warned us about. I played my final card. If I'm so confused, why did I manage to record Jackson on the phone, discussing how to forge my signature, or talking about how you still think the move is temporary when he has no intention of letting me return? Jennifer's eyes widened. What? I pressed play on the recorder, and Jackson's voice filled the room. The old man's getting suspicious, but it won't matter once the transfer is complete. Jennifer still thinks it's temporary, so keep that story consistent when you talk to her. Jennifer turned to Jackson, her face pale. What is he talking about? You said Dad would come back home once he was stabilized. Jackson's mask slipped for a moment, anger flashing in his eyes before he controlled it. He's manipulating recordings, Jennifer. Can't you see he's trying to come between us? But doubt had crept into Jennifer's expression. I pressed my advantage. Ask him about the house sale. The papers show it's being sold for $400,000, but the market value is over $700,000. Where's the rest of the money going? Jennifer looked at the documents on my desk, then back at Jackson. Is that true? Are we selling Dad's house below value? Before Jackson could answer, the doorbell rang. We all froze, looking at each other. That would be Detective Ramirez, I said calmly. I invited her to join us for this conversation. Jackson's composure cracked entirely. He grabbed Jennifer's arm. We need to leave. Now. Your father has lost his mind. Don't touch her, I warned, stepping forward. The doorbell rang again, followed by a firm knock. Mr. Harrington? Detective Ramirez, Police Department. We had an appointment. Jackson released Jennifer and rushed toward the back door. Before he could reach it, Harold stepped into view in the backyard, arms crossed. More importantly, 2 uniformed officers appeared behind him. Trapped, Jackson turned back to face me, his expression a mixture of rage and calculation. This isn't over, old man. Actually, I replied as Detective Ramirez entered the hallway. I think at Island. The next few hours passed in a blur of statements and revelations. Detective Ramirez arrested Jackson on multiple charges: identity fraud, forgery, attempted elder abuse, and violation of probation from his previous conviction. The notary, Ellis, arrived during the commotion and found himself detained for questioning as well. Jennifer sat shell, shocked on the couch, as the full extent of Jackson's deception was revealed. The fraudulent sale, the forged power of attorney, the tampered medication, and most damning, the discovery of similar schemes in 2 other states under different aliases. "He targeted me because of you," she whispered, as we sat together after the police had taken Jackson away. "Because your name was on the property with mine." I took her hand gently. "He targeted you because you're kind and trusting, like your mother was. That's not a failing, Jennifer. The world needs more people like you, but it also needs us to be careful." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "How can you even look at me? I was going to let him put you in that place. I signed those papers. Because you believed you were helping me," I said firmly. "You believed what he wanted you to believe. That's how con men work. They're convincing because they make you think the deception was your idea all along." She shook her head, inconsolable. "I should have trusted you. I should have listened when you tried to warn me." I pulled her into a hug, remembering when she was small enough to fit in my lap after falling off her bike. Some hurts never change, no matter how old your child becomes. "We'll get through this," I promised her. Together. The weeks following Jackson's arrest were difficult for all of us. Jennifer moved back into her old apartment downtown, too ashamed to stay in the house with me, despite my assurances that she was welcome. She filed for an annulment immediately, citing fraud and misrepresentation, which was granted with surprising speed, given the circumstances. Jackson remained in custody, unable to make the substantial bail set by the judge once his previous record came to light. The investigation revealed he had successfully pulled similar schemes in 3 other states, sometimes working alone, sometimes with accomplices like Troy, who turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. The notary, Ellis, lost his license and faced charges of his own for knowingly participating in the fraud. The so-called doctor, Patterson, turned out to be a former medical assistant with no license or credentials, now facing charges for impersonating a physician. Most painful was the discovery that Jackson had indeed been tampering with my medication for weeks, gradually increasing the dosage of sedatives to create symptoms that mimicked cognitive decline. The pharmacist who had identified the switched pills provided crucial testimony that helped build the prosecution's case. For Jennifer, the healing process was slow and painful. She attended therapy sessions twice weekly, working through her feelings of guilt, shame, and betrayal. She withdrew from friends and colleagues, embarrassed by how thoroughly she had been deceived. I visited her regularly, bringing home cooked meals and sitting with her even when she had little to say. Some days we just watched television together in silence. Other days she would cry until she had no tears left, and I would hold her hand like I did when she was small. "I keep thinking about the red flags," she said during one of these visits. "They were so obvious in hindsight. The way he rushed everything, how he never talked about his past, the extravagant gifts he couldn't really afford. Why didn't I see it?" "Because he showed you what you wanted to see," I replied gently. "We all have blind spots when it comes to love." "I didn't love him," she said after a moment. "I loved the idea of him, the successful, charming man who chose me. I was so focused on not being alone anymore that I ignored every warning sign." 3 months after Jackson's arrest, Jennifer started volunteering at a local senior center, helping elderly residents learn to identify and avoid scams. It was her way of making amends, she said, though I assured her repeatedly that she had nothing to atone for. She was a victim too. As for me, I made some changes to ensure nothing like this could ever happen again. Frank helped me create a proper estate plan with an irrevocable trust for the house. I designated Jennifer as my healthcare proxy, with Harold as a backup, and created detailed advance directives for my care should I ever become genuinely incapacitated. I also installed a security system in the house, more for Jennifer's peace of mind than my own. The cameras that had caught Jackson in the act remained, now part of a monitored security network that would alert both Jennifer and me to any unusual activity. 6 months after the ordeal began, Jennifer finished her master's degree in social work, something she had put on hold when she met Jackson. At her graduation dinner, She announced she had accepted a position with Adult Protective Services, specializing in financial exploitation cases. "I want to use what happened to us to help others," she explained. "There are so many vulnerable people out there, and so many predators like Jackson. I couldn't have been prouder. My daughter had taken her pain and transformed it into purpose. Martha would have been amazed by her resilience. As for the house, it remained in our family, now protected by legal safeguards that would prevent anyone from ever attempting to take it through deception again." Jennifer visited every Sunday for dinner, resuming our tradition but with a new appreciation for what it represented. Not just a meal, but a connection that had weathered the worst kind of storm. One evening, as we sat on the deck watching the sunset, Jennifer asked me a question that had clearly been on her mind. "How did you know, Dad? From the beginning, you sensed something was wrong with Jackson. What gave him away?" I thought about it carefully. It wasn't any one thing. It was all the small inconsistencies that added up. The way his stories never quite connected. The way he looked at the house, rather than the people in it. But mostly, it was that feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. She nodded slowly. "I need to learn to trust that feeling." "You will," I assured her. "Experience is a tough teacher, but the lessons stick." Jackson eventually pled guilty to multiple charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 8 years. Jennifer attended the sentencing hearing, needing to see the conclusion of that chapter in her life. When the judge asked if she wanted to make a victim impact statement, she declined. "He's taken enough of my time and energy," she told me afterward. "I'm ready to move forward." Today, our lives have found a new rhythm. Jennifer bought a small house, just a few blocks from mine, close enough for regular visits, but maintaining her independence. She's dating again, cautiously, with a wisdom beyond her years when it comes to recognizing authentic connections. I've joined a senior advocacy group, sharing my experience to help others protect themselves from similar schemes. Harold and Mabel remain my faithful neighbors and friends, our bond strengthened by the crisis we weathered together. The house stands much as it always has, with Martha's garden still blooming in spring and the deck where we've celebrated so many milestones still solid underfoot. But now it represents something more than just a home. It's a testament to resilience, to the power of truth over deception, and to the unbreakable bond between a father and daughter that even the most calculated con man couldn't sever. I've learned that the most valuable things we build in this life aren't made of wood and stone, but of trust, love, and truth. Those foundations, when properly laid, can withstand any storm. And while the pain of betrayal may leave scars, it also leaves wisdom that can protect us and others in the future. Have you ever had to trust your instincts when something felt wrong? Has your gut feeling ever protected you from making a serious mistake? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story helped you recognize red flags in your own life, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Thank you for listening. And remember to keep an eye on those you love, especially the most vulnerable. Sometimes the greatest threat comes disguised as the answer to our deepest wishes.